You know that feeling when you read about some amazing new medical breakthrough and you think, wow, that's going to change everything? And then you never hear about it again. It's a frustration we've all felt, right? We know healthcare can be so much better, but actually getting better seems to move at a snail's pace. So let's get into why that happens, and more importantly, how we can start closing that gap. It really all comes down to this one kind of shocking number: 17 years. Yeah, you heard that right. 17. That's the average time it takes for solid, proven medical research to actually make its way into your local clinic. I mean, think about that. A 17-year gap between knowing what works and actually doing what works. So, what's the deal with this massive delay? The best way to think about it is like a huge knowledge traffic jam. All this life-saving information is just sitting there, bumper to bumper, not getting where it needs to go. In this explainer, we're going to pull out the map and look at the route that can get us through this jam and get these breakthroughs to the people who need them way faster. All right, so to bust through that traffic, we need a plan, a roadmap. We need a framework for thinking about how we take all these messy, raw facts and turn them into smart, life-saving decisions. And believe it or not, there's a really clear model for this journey. And that model is called the DIKW pyramid. It stands for data, information, knowledge, and wisdom. This pyramid is basically our guide for this whole explainer. It shows us exactly how we're supposed to climb from just a bunch of random, disconnected facts at the bottom all the way to the top, to what we call true clinical wisdom. So let's just quickly walk up the steps, right? At the very bottom, you've got raw data. Think of a single blood pressure number, pretty useless on its own. Now you add some context, like who the patient is, their age, their history. Suddenly it becomes information. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Then you spot patterns in that information across thousands of patients. That's when you get knowledge. Like, oh, people with this profile tend to have this outcome. And finally, when a doctor applies all that knowledge with experience and judgment to help one specific person sitting in front of them, boom, that's wisdom. Our whole goal is to make that climb happen way, way faster. Okay, so how do we actually start climbing? Well, it begins with a whole field of science that's all about one thing: turning what we know into what we do. It's about bridging that gap between the knowledge level of our pyramid and the wisdom of putting it into action in the real world. And this right here, this is really the heart of the issue. For so long, the focus has been on just discovering more stuff, creating more knowledge. But that 17-year gap, it's not really a knowledge problem. It's an application problem. We often know exactly what to do. We just have a really hard time doing it consistently for everyone everywhere. And that's where this field called implementation science comes into play. It's pretty much what it sounds like. It's the scientific study of how to implement things. It's not about inventing a new wonder drug. It's the science of making sure the amazing breakthroughs we already have actually get to the people they're supposed to help. Okay, that might sound a little abstract, so let's bring it down to earth with a real-world problem. Picture a hospital floor where, for some reason, patients are staying way longer than they should. Now, we have tons of knowledge, mountains of it, that shows getting patients up and moving around early helps them get home faster. But for whatever reason, this specific unit just isn't doing it. So, implementation science gives us a playbook for how to fix this. It's not just about telling people, hey, walk your patients more. No. First, you figure out what the barriers are. Are the nurses worried about patients falling? Is there not enough equipment? Then, you get the right people in the room: nurses, doctors, therapists, everyone. You come up with specific strategies, like better training, simple checklists, or just giving folks feedback on how they're doing. And the last, crucial step, you measure everything to see if it's working and figure out how to make this new way of doing things stick for good. And that last part, measuring the results, is absolutely key. Because that's how we close the loop. We turn our actions back into data and information, feeding the bottom of our pyramid all over again. It creates this cycle of always getting better. But to do that, you first need a way to agree on what good actually looks like. Okay, so let's say we got our mobility program running. Patients are up and walking the halls. That's great. But is it actually helping? How do we know this change is a real improvement and we didn't just make everyone busier for no reason? We need like a report card, a way to grade ourselves. And for that, we can turn to something called the Donabedian Framework. It's a classic, been around since the 60s. But it's genius in its simplicity. You can basically think of it as that report card for healthcare quality. And it breaks quality down into 3 simple things to look at. First up is structure. Basically, do we have the right stuff? enough trained people, the right equipment, a safe environment. The second is process. Are we doing the right things? For our example, this means, are we actually assessing every patient's ability to move? Are we following the walking schedule? And finally, there's outcome. Are we getting the right results? This is the bottom line. Are patients going home sooner? Are there fewer complications? Are they happier with their care? Structure, process, outcome. Simple. So let's put these two pieces together. We've got a playbook for making change happen with implementation science, and we've got a report card to see if we're doing a good job with the Donabedian Framework. That creates this really powerful engine for improvement. But how do we supercharge it? How do we make that engine run fast enough to close that 17-year gap? Well, this is where a game-changing tool comes in, AI. And here's the connection that changes everything. AI can look at that Donabedian report card, the structure, the process, and the outcomes, and it can analyze it all in real time. It can look at staffing levels and what time patients are walked and 1,000 other data points, and it can find these tiny, hidden patterns that a human could never see. Patterns that help us predict and improve the outcomes, sometimes before something bad even has a chance to happen.
So what AI is really doing is taking all that messy, raw clinical data, the bottom layer of our DIKW pyramid, and it's finding the meaningful signals in all that noise. It basically gives us a shortcut, a way to leapfrog from just having tons of data straight to having actionable knowledge and even wisdom.
So when we say AI in healthcare, what are we really talking about? Well, put simply, it's about computer systems that can learn from data on their own. They can chew through just massive amounts of information to find trends and help us make decisions. The kinds of decisions that would normally take a human years and years of experience to figure out. Think about it like this. An amazing, experienced doctor might base their judgment on having seen, a few hundred or maybe a few thousand patients in their career, and that's incredibly valuable. But an AI can learn from the data of millions of patients. It can see connections across populations that no single human brain could ever hope to process. It's not about replacing that doctor's wisdom. It's about making it even more powerful.
But at the end of the day, we have to remember something really important. All this stuff we've talked about, implementation science, the Donabedian Framework, even AI, they're not the point. They're just tools. And all these tools are meant to serve one and only one ultimate goal.
And that goal is what you see here, making healthcare truly about the patient. It's about using these smarter, faster systems to get past the one-size-fits-all approach and instead deliver care that's tailored to what each individual person actually needs and wants. Which brings us to one last and maybe the most important question of all. We've got the tools to make healthcare smarter and faster than we ever thought possible. But as we race to the top of that wisdom pyramid, how do we make absolutely sure that as healthcare gets smarter, it also gets more human? How do we ensure it becomes more compassionate and more connected? That right there is the real challenge we're facing.